How are we all doing? Great, good. What an exciting panel. Okay, so it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the second panel of the afternoon. I want to say hats off to Leah for running a hybrid panel. They're not easy to run because you have to bounce in between. But I also will have the pleasure of running a hybrid panel because we have four phenomenal panelists with me today, so I'm very excited to have you here. And to start off the panel, again, this session is all about sort of pathways to comprehensive labour integration for migrants and the role that digital can play in this as well. So, you heard earlier in the last panel about what are the challenges that sort of migrants face, what kind of skills are they looking to adopt, and how can we engage them and reach them as best as possible. In this session, we'll look a bit about specifically how can we recognize some of the skills and the prior learning that they've taken on board, and understand from the experts exactly how certain programs and certain initiatives that exist have been effective to engage migrants and hopefully help them with regards to labour market integration. So to introduce my panelists today, you'll see I have even much more complicated to do two other hybrid or virtual panelists as well. So thank you very much for my panelists for being here with us today. So I'll start the panel by first introducing or allowing my panelists to introduce themselves, and the order by which I think we're going to start with Tiina, and then we're going to go back this way as well. But if I could, for the sake of the introduction, have you just state your name, your role, the organisation, and also if I could have you give the rest of the panelists, the rest of the audience, what excites you about the topic around labour market integration for migrants, and also kind of your role that you play within skills policy for them too as well. But I'm going to start with Tiina. You're in the middle first. If I start with you, and then I'm going to work my way backwards, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. It's my pleasure to be here with you today and discuss this topic. My name is Tiina Polo, and I come from the European Commission and from the unit of skills agenda. And I work there with skills and qualifications transparency tools, to European qualification frameworks, and also the migration policies and initiatives in the perspective of skills. And what I mean by the transparency of the skills and qualifications, I mean that we can identify and we can understand the skills and qualifications, and we can also trust that the skills and the qualifications are presented that way that it has a certain quality assurance. We can trust them. And I'm also happy that we have these different kind of digital tools to help this skills transparency and also the skills assessment of migrants, and also to communicate the skills to employers and other people.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And next over to Maria.
Hello, and nice to meet you. Good afternoon to you all. And thank you for the invitation. I think it has been great what we have just heard in the first panel, and I hope that the second panel will be also interesting. I'm Maria do Carmo Gomes. I work for the EU agency that is called European Training Foundation. It's not a foundation. It doesn't provide training. And we don't work with European member states, so the name is absolutely misleading. But what we do is we are a EU agency, so we are part of the EU family, let's say, and we work with all the countries that are neighboring the European Union. So from Morocco to Kazakhstan, from Belarus to Egypt, 29 partner countries. And we work with them on employment, skills development, and related policies, so somehow also migration policies. I'm a senior expert on human capital development, which is also maybe a misleading title. I work on education, training, and skills, and I provide advice to governments and work on research topics related to this. And in the past years, I have worked quite a lot on education, training, key competencies, literacy skills, digital migration. So somehow you found my profile interesting to come here today. And what drives me and what strikes me on working with these topics is that I would really like that some of the barriers that have been just mentioned today in the first panel can be removed. We saw here, I don't think that migrants or people with a migrant background, I do prefer this terminology, lack prior learning or informal learning. Every one of us has prior learning, has informal learning. We do it I did it now, just there, sat on that chair and I learned a lot. On a non-formal setting, I do it all my days during my life. So they don't lack that. What they lack is formal process for recognizing what they already know and what we all know. And I think this is the mechanism that is lacking. We call it recognition of prior learning. We can call it validation of non-formal and informal learning, but that's it. So removing barriers for making this digital inclusion a reality, because I think we are still discussing about a wishful thinking and not so much about a reality, though there are a lot of initiatives in the field that contribute to that.
Thank you so much, and we're really pleased to have you here, so thank you for joining us. If we next hear from Karine.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to join remotely. So I'm Karine Sonigo, and I'm a skills digitalization specialist working at the International Labour Organization at headquarters Geneva. And really my role is to support our constituents, whether they are governmental agencies or TVET institutions, in the digital transformation of national skills or skills development and TVET systems. So not only supporting the changing response to the skills demand in the labor market, but also provide support in enabling digital skills development systems, in creating this enabling environment to make it happen. So how do we support policymakers, TVET institutions, to transform the way they not only design and deliver skills, but also provide mechanisms for recognition of prior learning, career guidance, access to training opportunities in an online manner. And what excites me, well, I'm very much into looking at how we can leverage technologies for good, specifically to enhance recognition and portability of skills across borders. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karine. And we will be talking about portability of skills, which is a really important topic as well. Last but not least, Amadou.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amadou Sako. I'm the IOE, International Organization of Employers Advisors for Africa, Advisor and Project Officer for Africa. So the International Organization of Employers, it's a network of more than 150 employers organizations in more than 150 countries, representing more than 50 million companies. So the IOE is also the sole representative of business in the International Labour Organization. And our vision is to create a sustainable economic environment around the world in collaboration with members and partners that promotes free enterprise and is fair and beneficial to both business and society. So myself, I'm in charge of coordinating the engagement of African employers organization within the International Labour Organization, and also work on several other topics such as informalities, so how to help actors in the informal sector to become formal, youth employment, and trade and youth entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to be here today because employment, skill development, enterprise creation, and entrepreneurship lie at the heart of sustainable development, economic prosperity, and social stability, which are priorities for the IOE. And the key indicator of economic development in destination country is how well the migrants are integrated through labor market participation, quality of jobs held, and equality of treatment between national and migrant worker. And these are all subjects that matters for the IOE. So I'm looking forward for a very interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amadou. I think there's some really interesting insights we're going to be able to gather from an employee perspective as well. And we're going to look also at the kind of the sector-specific approach to the needs of the employees, but also matching them with the needs of those from the migrant population or with migrant background as well. So look, the first question I wanted to discuss was all about the skills mismatch between the skills that individuals have or some of the prior learning, whether informal or informal, to what employees are looking for at the moment. President von der Leyen actually recently announced 2023 European Year of Skills. So there's a lot of investment, a lot of focus on skills for next year, and the stakes are understandably high. The European Commission announced that there are several initiatives that are being invested in this space. And that includes obviously upskilling, reskilling, development of skills intelligence tools, understanding prior learning, portability, and recognitions of qualifications as well. But if we're looking at digital skills, over the years, we've seen that there's a mismatch, right, between existing skills at the moment. We saw in the video 40% of Europeans are lacking some basic digital skills, but also the demand for skills. 90% of jobs require digital skills. I'd like to start the question off, start with yourself, Tiina, and then go to yourself, Maria. In your perspective, why do you think the supply of skills has not been able to keep up with the demand of jobs? And what have been the biggest failings so far? Have you seen any initiatives that are driving a particular impact in this space? So I can start with yourself, Tiina, on that question.
Yes, thanks. I'm fully agreeing your forwards. It's really, we have this issue of skills mismatch the labor market, and we are really happy to have the next year as the European Year of Skills, as we can highlight the importance of developing skills and to upskilling and reskilling. And we indeed have quite a few initiatives under that, like you said. But I think the first thing to tackle here to enable better matches at the labor market, we need first to have assessment and identification of the skills. It's quite it's seen that the migrants' skills and the qualifications outside the EU, they are not understood quite well, and acknowledging these skills and qualification helps to access the labor market. And indeed, we need the right skills to match the jobs, but also the jobs should match the skills of the person. And of course, if there's gap between these skills by the job and the job seeker, we need upskilling and reskilling. And also in the very first principle of the European Pillar of Social Rights, it says that everyone has the right to quality and inclusive education training and lifelong learning in order to maintain and acquire skills that enable them to participate fully in society and manage successfully the transitions in the labor market we are having in future years. And also the member states has agreed on this target of social target of that 60% of the adult should participate in training every year. And this is really something that we need. And under the skills agenda launch 2020, we have indeed launched several initiatives under this. Like Karen in the beginning said, we need a large and broad collaboration on this. It cannot be done only by the public bodies or only by the education providers, but we need also the employers. So one of the initiatives in the skills agenda is the Pact for Skills. And it's a platform of cooperation that brings together public and private organizations like businesses, education providers, and chambers of commerce and public bodies. And it was launched 2 years ago. We had the anniversary, and it has now 1,000 members. And also it has already gathered pledges to help train 6 million people. And all the members in this pact, they are signed up to agree about its 4 main principles. And the first one is the promoting the culture of lifelong learning, promoting the culture also in the job places and in the education providers and so on. And the second one is the building strong skill partnerships. Like I said, we really need the partnerships here. And also third is to anticipate the skills needs and also monitor the skills needs, skills demand, skills supply. And also the fourth, but not least, the last one, is working against the discrimination and also working for the gender equality and equal opportunities. We have still, I would mention 2 other initiatives. I would mention the real tools to implement the lifelong learning and to enable the learning to adult people. One is the recommendation of individual learning accounts from last summer. And it really encourages the member states to put up a national registry for the training, validation, career guidance, which would be funded by the training entitlements for all. And also to arrange paid training leave for employed person. And the other recommendation we had last summer, which was given last summer, is about micro-credentials. We don't need to always take on gaining new qualification. Sometimes it's shorter course, it's all we need. But in that sense, we should have a way to certify the learning outcomes of these short courses, so we can really trust the quality of the short outcomes and what short courses and what's the learning outcome in those. And also these tools are tools for this today's topic to help also the migrants.
I couldn't agree more. I think the micro-certifications or micro-certs are a great way to keep up with the change in tech, the rapid change in tech, and understanding you can't go on a 1, 2, 3 year course to try and learn some of the technical skills that will adapt and change over time. So it's just great to hear about the individual learning accounts and micro-credentials that exist out there. Maria, from your side, I'd love to understand a bit about any initiatives you're seeing that are working well at the moment, but also I know you and I have discussed a little bit about sort of the core technical competencies aligned with the, or on the other side of it, the more softer, perhaps more transferable skills. And how do we get that balance right when we're thinking of the mismatch between employees and those that are skilled or migrant individuals?
Yeah, Gori, that's for me that is something very important when we are looking at this mismatch. There are many tools, many indicators that can be used to say at the end that there is a skills mismatch. That is, we all know. ILO knows, we know, OECD knows, the Commission knows how to measure it, how to identify it. But are we identifying the right ones? And that is my I would say, my challenging to the audience also, because for me, the technical ones are missing, yes, and the occupations change very drastically and very quickly, and we all know that this is what the labor market is looking for. So we see the adverts, and the adverts are for engineers, developers, cooks. So it's not for communicators or team workers or for people that has digital skills that can be enablers of other types of forms of work. So That's to say that we are still looking mostly at the technical skills, at the occupations and at the qualifications. And we are not looking at the other side of what a qualification is. That is also attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, and this should be also part of the mismatching measurement, because sometimes employers in the surveys, when we are trying to forecast what are the skills that are missing, they say we don't have the skills that we need. But when we dig into it, they say, but what we need are transferable skills, are people that know how to learn. We want workers that, besides the technical ones, and of course the technical ones are very important, I'm not disregarding these ones. We cannot replace an engineer by a non-engineer, and the scientific skills and the knowledge is very important, but it's a combination of skills. And we are not looking sufficiently to the ones that are transversal, that are, as you said, maybe transferable, the ones that are the social skills, and the ones, more important than all for me, that are still the basic literacy skills. When we look at these vulnerable groups, you just show in the video, 40% miss digital skills. But these 40% are an average. If we are going to see who are the citizens that miss these 40% of digital skills, we will see that there is a huge concentration in groups that are the most vulnerable ones, the older ones, the low qualified ones. So these are the ones that miss basic skills. They miss still the writing, the reading, and the calculation skills. Though we think that this is not a problem anymore, even in EU member states, it is a problem. There are many EU member states where you still have larger groups of population, and they are not only the older ones, that miss these kind of skills. So if you don't know how to read, write, and calculate, you cannot use your phone. That is more than an advanced landline phone that now is a portable one, but it's not something else that is not a smartphone. Or you cannot use the internet, or you cannot use a computer. And these, for me, are skills that employers are looking at as foundational skills. So this group of people have already a disadvantage. Now, add the digital ones, and you have this 40% that do not have the digital skills. So you are excluding from the labor market immediately, and I don't want to say that is 40, but at least 1/3. 1/3 of the active population is already out because of this, because digital skills are now considered, as it was 20 years ago, the literacy skills. So I wanted to bring this, because I know also maybe Karine will talk a lot about anticipation of technical skills. So I wanted to bring this different perspective on what is the mismatch of skills in the labor market. I think I have the opportunity to elaborate further on initiatives that can be mentioned for migrants, but I will stop here now.
No, and thank you so much for giving that, to having us think a little bit differently about the skills that are necessary, because the skills mismatch, we often think about technical, as opposed to actually the transversal skills, which, again, a lot of employers are saying this is foundational, this is basic, but the basic digital literacy skills are absolutely key, right? For you to be able to engage not just in society, but definitely in the workplace as well, which I think is key. Karine, I will come to you, but actually I wanted to have I think more about labour market integration, right? And understanding how digital skills can be an accelerator towards that. Look, if we're looking in the specific case of migrants and refugees, they typically do face more struggles than other groups, right? We understand that it might be culturally, might be linguistically, it could be a basic literacy skill challenge that they have, and many of them actually enter the European market with skills and qualifications, but they're not also recognised. I want to start with Amadou first before I come to you, to Karine. Apologies, but I'd love to know from your perspective, or actually more importantly from an employer's perspective, what are some of the opportunities you can see that are arising around how employers can welcome in or even recognise some of the skills that some migrant individuals or refugees actually have? And how are employers embracing some of the technology to be able to recognise these skills, or how are they trying to recognise these skills that these migrants have?
Thank you very much. So from the very outset, I really like to commend the initiative of DigiCo which mission is to ensure that all people have access to skills that can improve their lives and help them thrive in the digital age through collective unified approach. So my remark that will follow will further explain why I strongly support and applaud the work of DigiCo. So let's start by trying to get a clear picture of immigration in Europe. So according to the European Commission, the European Union is the home of 21.6 million third country nationals, accounting for 4.2% of the total EU population. New migrants settling in the EU every year represent less than 0.5% of the EU population. So most migrants residing in the EU are likely to stay in medium term. Therefore, finding a job and being included in the society is crucial for their successful integration. And third, still according to the European Commission, third country national immigrants have worse labor market outcomes compared to EU nationals. The average employment rate of working age non-EU migrants residing in the EU was 55% in 2017 against 68% of the host country national. With unfavorable outcomes in education, skills, and social inclusion, 39% of third country national, so that represents 5.7 million people, lives in relative poverty, over twice the rate for EU national. So there are several reasons for gaps in the integration of non-EU migrants, mostly related to lagging behind in education, language barriers, discrimination, and even access to employment and decent housing and social services, and mismatching jobs and overqualification in the case of highly educated migrants. So let's focus on education, as DigiCo mission is related to that. I would also like to raise the specific case of migration from developing countries. So movement from the developing countries to the European industrialized countries have been a consistent trend for many decades. So as the world rapidly undergoes digital transformation, accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, the fault line of the current ecosystem have also come to light. While about 100 million people across the globe came online for the first time between 2019 and 2021, about 2.1 billion still remain offline, most residing in developing countries, more specifically in sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Simply due to a lack of digital infrastructure or skills, and in many cases of both. So this is why the International Organization of Employers, the IOE, in partnership with a Renault IT company, has decided to launch a Tech at Work program called Tech at Work, aiming at upskilling 20,000 young African people in digital skills. There is a huge digital divide, a digital gap between developed countries and industrialized European countries. And employers are the one who uses the workforce. So we are in a pole position of identifying and of posing the appropriate action in order to fill this gap. In short, many migrants coming to the EU from developing countries, especially sub-Saharan Africa, have a lack of digital skills due to the lack of infrastructure and digital skills development in their country of origin. So in countries of destination where organizations are going more and more digital, fostering digital skills is a way to foster migrants' integration into the labor market. And I repeat, employers, through employers' organization, we have the role in identifying and filling this gap through programs such as the Tech at Work program, where we directly go in country of origin, in this case in LDCs, least developed countries, in order to fill the gap by elaborating a program such as the Tech at Work program in order to upskill young African people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amadou, and I congratulate you for launching the Tech at Work program as well. And I'd like to move on to Karine as well. You do a lot of work from a sector-specific approach, understanding what the needs of employers are across different member states as well. And I'd love to know from your perspective, are there any initiatives that either you're working on that might really help us understand how employers can better learn what skills they need, and also what skills that migrants can really bring, or refugees can really bring into their organizations? And also another question on technology. So how can technology itself support accelerated learner journeys? How do we, really leverage the power of tech when we're looking at trying to kind of, drive that acceleration into and integration into the workforce?
Thank you. Well, to try to leverage and complement what previous speakers have already said, you were referring to how digital skills can accelerate migrants' integration in the society, and I would say that the skills development opportunities when it comes to digital skills, but any type of skills eventually, should really be part of an integrated experience, from skills profiling that was referred to career education or career guidance, skills development opportunities, and access to decent work and employment opportunities. I would say that without this, we would end up with, a lot of isolated, non-strategic initiatives where individuals, and again, migrants specifically, would maybe have visibility on, maybe not, and would end up with, attending a course on specific skills, but without the ability to leverage it to, and value it to employers. So I would say that this integrated pathway for migrants is definitely key. Maybe I can refer to one of the, because you were talking about the identification of the required or skills that are in demand for employers. So I may briefly, conscious of time, refer to the STED approach of the ILO, which is skills for trade and economic diversification. And it's an approach to identify the skills, whether that be at a national or at a sectoral level, to enable employers, but also training institutions and providers, to identify those skills that are the most in demand in priority sectors / occupations. And when it comes to those approaches to identify skills needs, a common recommendation that comes out of it is to set what is called sometimes sector skills councils or sector skills bodies, where you are represented not only governments and skills development institutions, but also employers and workers organizations, as well as the industry and the private sector, to make sure that, as you said, the supply for skills is really aligned to the demand. And really, in order, if I can say like this, like in order to be for digital skills to be a booster and enabler to decent work, we can also say that migrants need information on the type of skills they need to be developing or increasing or maintaining to boost their employability. So any mechanism on pre-departure type of support is really key to make sure that individuals, whenever they are entering a host country, they have those type of information to be able then to access skills development opportunities. Now, to leverage on what Maria was saying, it is critical to have this right, set of skills that are definitely technical skills, but also literacy skills, digital skills, and core or transversal skills, as we call them. And we've recently at the ILO updated the core skills framework for life and work in the 21st century, where those basic digital skills have been added together with the skills for green jobs, basic skills for green jobs, which are definitely, a basis on which individuals should enhance their skills for employability. Now, when it comes to what you are referring as, technology as an enabler of access to training opportunities and recognition and portability, again, for technologies to be real enablers, we definitely have to look into, those barriers that were mentioned in the previous panel and just at the beginning of this one, to make sure that we're not increasing the digital divide and that technologies are leveraged for good, bearing in mind the beneficiaries, like the individuals, the end users' capabilities, whether that be in terms of skills, readiness, infrastructure, devices. You were referring to languages and attitudes as well. So technologies in that sense should be used only if they had value, only if they facilitate, access and enhance experience and efficiency. And in that case, yes, technologies will be an enabler to maximize outreach for the most vulnerable, whether that be, for people on the move that we are, focusing our attention on to today, but also for more, remote and rural areas, for women that we've referred to as well, people with disabilities, etc. So the fact that technologies enable those more flexible learning pathways or pathways to employment is really key, and we may touch upon the how technologies can facilitate access to recognition of prior learning processes, and I would be glad to say a few words on that too. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that, Karine. I think it's very important that we understand information is key, right? So where do they go to get the information to learn about what skills are needed in which sectors, and how do we ensure that people are enabled to be able to find the information or the learning they need to be able to get into the sectors or the employment as well? So I'm now going to move on to the recognition of prior learning. I think it's a really important point that many of all my amazing experts on the stage and online have the ability to talk about. But I'd love to start with yourself, Tiina. So understanding what tools or frameworks exist at the moment that can be used to recognize prior skills, but also support career development and career guidance. I'm aware that there's a skills profiling tool, for example, which I think would be great to learn a bit more about. But I'd love to know a bit about sort of why these created and what's been the impact so far of tools like that. So if I start with yourself, Tiina.
Yes, thanks. We indeed, in 2017, launched the skills profiling tool, and it's especially designated for as a first aid tool and first stage assessment for refugees and migrants and coming from non-EU countries. And it really serves as a first assessment, overall assessment of the skills, starting from basic skills, and it can support the further and deeper assessments and forms as a basis for the further guidance and for the further services needed, and maybe identifies the upskilling needs, or even shows if there are already skills matching the labor market. And this tool is online, multilingual, and it's used by the officials or the non-governmental organizations who first meet the refugee when he's entering to EU. And it's filled by the advisor or social worker or project worker together in a dialogue with the third country national coming here. And it has all the member state languages and also the 7 languages most common used by the refugees coming to EU, and it can be also used by individuals by themselves. You can find it online, and you can report out like a CV or what you can help to produce a CV. And it's really the first assessment tool we are offering here. But I would like to also introduce, we have the other tool also, the Europass platform, which is also online tool, and it's the major tool for individuals themselves to form a CV or manage their career by updating their CVs and share it with employees, and also to find these training offers in member states, and it's also connected to Euros, where you can find jobs here in the Europe, and that's the tool we have renewed, and it's now focused for the more broader public. So the skills profiling tool and the Europass platform.
Fantastic. Yeah, they both seem like fantastic platforms, and I'm familiar with Europass, and the skills profiling tool is actually particularly interesting. I'd love to hear from your perspective, Maria. Have you seen that tool being used or implemented? Do you have any examples or stories to tell about how we can leverage a tool like this to be able to help individuals understand how they use their skills or showcase them in a certain way?
Yeah. In fact, we did in Turkey together with ILO, and it was a project with EBRD, ILO, and the ETF has also collaborated on trying to identify a model. First, it was the model, and then it was implemented in practice, and with I would say thousands of individuals benefiting from it, that as integrated in that model, the youth skills profile toolkit. So it was really, as Tiina was saying, at the first stage, at the front desk, each refugee that was accepted in the camps. There was this kind of centers, hosting centers in Turkey that was as a reflex of the Syrian crisis. They have been created and they have been supported by a specific EU fund for that. So in these centers, the first stage was to guide, inform, and try to identify, profile what were the skills that each of those persons already have. So our 52%, I stay with this 52% in my mind with the poll that says that people don't have they lack the informal or the prior learning. No, they have. We might miss this kind of tools that can be used for assessing it. So the youth skills profile toolkit, I don't know if it is possible to share because it's only one slide, but what we did with this model was that we tried to identify the routes towards labor market integration. So the first stage was to use the toolkit as the first tool to identify what people already have. The tool doesn't make only an assessment of skills, it's a self-assessment, but it doesn't make only an assessment of skills. It also asks each of the candidates, of the beneficiaries, a lot of questions on their social background, on their cultural background. So it's really a very interesting and powerful tool. I really recommend that providers that are working with migrants, other institutions, NGOs, social economy organizations, that they really look at this tool because it is quite powerful and is translated. It's a multilingual tool, which we don't see so often. It is translated in, I think, 50 or more languages that are identified as relevant languages of origins of those migrants. So it is not done for member state citizens, it's done exactly for the migrants. And what we did was to use this at the first stage and then employment and migration services were working together. First, to identify the group of people that have already diplomas and skills, and they were documented, so they could benefit from any kind of recognition of qualifications. Yeah? So this is the formal process. Second group was the ones that, despite they have all this learning, they were either undocumented or not formalized. So these ones were beneficiaries of recognition of prior learning or validation of non-formal and informal learning mechanisms in occupations that were in more need of the labor market, of the Turkish labor market. And the third group was the ones that, despite they had already some skills and the assessment with the tool proved that, they were the ones that needed most training. So they were the third group that were then direct towards training programs. And these training programs should be already part of the active labor market measures existing in the country, or to be developed together with ILO. We did that work also to identify what kind of active labor markets could be done, so they could be trained and immediately, or as much as possible immediately, integrated into labor market vacancies. So this model, which is, it's in the ETF website, it's a very simple model. I explain it in a much more complicated way than the chart. It's a flow chart, one-page flow chart, which has all these kind of routes that can be used for integrating migrants and refugees into the labor market. And I just want to finalize with another tool that ETF has been developing now for the Ukrainian refugees. I don't know if Dana is still online, but I will contact her for sure. That is an information tool. What we did was we tried to build a platform. It's online, it's in the ETF website, that is a place where Ukrainian citizens can find all the relevant information about the qualifications and the skills in the member states and vice versa. And it's available in Ukrainian, and it's available, of course, in member states' languages. So, and this is to facilitate each citizen. If I am an Ukrainian refugee, I can go there, it's in Ukrainian, I can understand in the country that I have now been hosted, which are the services that I have available, which are the labor market vacancies that are there, which are the training courses that are there, which are the training providers, to avoid exactly one of the barriers that we were also talking about, that is that people also find themselves in situations that are even more difficult, that is to go to a non-accredited provider, to undertake a non-valid training program. And this, for me, it's the third pillar. So we talked about information, we talked about profiling, and we need to talk about formalization of the training that is delivered. Because afterwards, after all these efforts of training migrants, with all these efforts, if they don't have the formal certification, then the employers, and I look at Amadou now, even digitally, they will say, we still have a mismatch because these people don't have the skills that we need.
Absolutely. I think it's a really good point. Look, there are lots of different training providers out there offering lots of different kinds of training, and I think the formalization is really important. I think employers were also taking on a bit of a mindset shift as to how they can recognize, these skills informally or formally, and platforms and tools like this would be great. We're unfortunately running out of time, but I do want to ask Karine real quickly just on her thoughts around skills portability. And, she talks a little bit about, obviously, the profiling tool, but I know you've worked a lot with things like logbooks and passports, and I'd love to know any other tools that you've used that you think would be useful for some of the audience to be aware of, that might be relevant in terms of practical advice.
I may briefly touch upon the workshop that we've conducted last year under the Global Skills Partnership on migration. where we brought together representatives of key international and national organizations who are involved in deploying technology to enhance the recognition of skills and qualifications of migrant workers and refugees, and the EU and the EC were definitely present to showcase those tools that you are referring to. And it really provided an opportunity to discuss those recent developments and the challenges that come with those skills logbooks, skills passports, and other mechanisms for skills portability. And among others, we've looked at a tool that is used in Sri Lanka, which is the Sri Lanka Skills Passport that I may briefly touch on. And the Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission in Sri Lanka of the Ministry of Skills Development and the Employment and Labour Relations, together with the Employers Federation of Ceylon and the International Labour Organization, have introduced this Skills Passport as a comprehensive skills portfolio for skills and qualification of a worker that have been acquired informally, along with references, and which is essentially a gateway to finding a job and accessing further training and reskilling and upskilling. So it's really a common platform through which a migrant worker, but also a worker in Sri Lanka, can check compatibility with a vacancy, for example, and they can assess that. They can also share their detailed history of core competencies and employment history, and they can acquire exemptions as well from courses or modules that have already been completed in a different setting. So it's really a system that makes possible documentation of skills, expertise, and experience of workers, which are being recorded thanks to technology in a methodological manner within and across sectors. So that is really to make sure that skills, competencies are being portable across sectors. I could talk about some other specific examples, such as the pilot of the Skill Lab profiling tool, mobile application that we've done in 3 different countries under Prospects for migrants and refugees as well. And I may touch upon briefly the fact that within this workshop, we've also looked at the use and the potential of blockchain technologies to enhance the recognition and portability of skills. So we know that the Europass, European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, for example, is a very good regional example of European Union using tech for public good. But we were looking at solutions that could go beyond the EU and have a more global coverage, if I may. And what was interesting is how blockchain and this concept of self-sovereignty and self-sovereign identity can help and enable individuals to hold their credentials intact and to decide whether and how they wish to share them with third parties, and this is really something that we've identified in terms of technologies, and see potential in blockchain to support this recognition and portability, including self-sovereignty as a key aspect. But of course, we've also identified in the same workshop and in further discussions that there are definitely some preconditions to it in terms of data quality and assurance. In fact, or in terms, if I may, of interoperability, the critical aspect of recognition of those online and macro credentials as well, and of course the key role of governmental regulations in that respect. So technologies, yes, but as a means, not as a solution per se or overall, if I may.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really good point. we didn't get in under the skin of like innovations, but you really touched on it there. But you did mention the, in your statement about technology being a value add, right? So we're not just innovating for innovation's sake. We're needing to take employers on a very long journey to be able to recognize skills before we really get under the skin of sovereignty of your learning, right? And I think blockchain is a great technology. I think there's something that we can do there that will be really powerful, but at the same time, we do have a long way to go. We're still trying to get into micro-credentials, which seems very new for a lot of organizations, and really kind of putting that formal stamp on that and making that be commonplace across employers. So there's still a bit of a journey to go on in there as well. Look, it's really unfortunate we're out of time. We have so much more to talk about, but I'm really thankful to have the experts here. Look, it was a really great discussion that allowed us to get under, the skin of where the mismatch really lies. Understanding that it's not just technical skills. We have great comments about transversal skills, and how do we ensure that we are educating employees around the importance of these, but also making sure that we're aware that basic literacy with regards to digital skills needs to be tackled. And actually, that's something that we, feel very strongly about in DigiCo. It's one of the reasons we use the DigiComp framework to really help us build that understanding of what the skills and what the levels are that people need to be able to get first and foremost. As we work with some partners that focus on reading, writing, literacy skills, as well as digital at that early stage, to allow people to have the access into the labour market as well. We talked a bit about sector skills bodies, so I really appreciate that you mentioned that, because I think that's a great way to kind of really understand what skills are necessary within specific sectors. And that's the information that those that are looking to enter the sectors are needing, and pulling that together, which is really, really key. And then obviously we talked a bit about technology, and thankfully when it comes to recognizing prior learning, there are some great tools out there. The skills profiling tool is a great starting point. For those that haven't seen it, it's available online, and hopefully we'll find a way to share the ETF's kind of flow diagram for how that gets used effectively. But yeah, I really again appreciate your time. I wish I could have brought Amadou more into the conversation, have you all have more time, but thank you so much. Can I just say thank you very much for the panelists for your insights and input into this as well.
Thank you.